Okay, so we should be live, and for the first minute or so, we're going to figure out if we can link this to 5 different Delaware State Representatives Facebook pages at one time. So let's see. And are you seeing it at this point?
I got the notification that we're live.
So if you click on that, if you click on that,
and hit share.
Yeah, is that working?
Which option? Oh, okay, it's under more options for me.
So this is 5 Delaware State Representatives figuring out how to use Facebook successfully. Okay, is anyone still working on getting it onto your own page?
It's on my personal, it's not on my rep page, but I can link it later and share it.
Okay, and Eric, I lost you. Can you hear us, Eric? Let's see what we can do to try to...
Did we just lose Paul too? Oh, we love technology and we are live.
My Facebook and came back to this screen and didn't.
We want to welcome everyone who tuned in. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. We had 27 people watching.
Okay, I need to get Eric in though. Eric. Okay, so we've got 3 of the 4 waiting for Representative Morrison. Let me see if it's there. Come on, Eric. How do we figure this one out? Guess. Eric, what do we got? Oh, good. Add to stream. Okay. We've got 5 on the camera. We're good. Okay. And Eric, do you think you've got it on your Facebook page?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Because I can't see myself, but I guess that's okay.
It's just a lag. You should see yourself in a minute.
So should we be on the StreamYard or the Facebook?
It should be. You can follow it on StreamYard, but it should be on Facebook. Are you seeing it there? Live now. There we go. Yeah, so I see all of us right now and 44 people watching.
And 21 people commenting.
Okay. Eric, how are you looking?
I'm getting this should I have StreamYard and Facebook both open?
I would not do it on the same device. I don't do it on the same device. The StreamYard, I think, needs to be up because that's got your camera and that keeps you in us. So if you want to be watching Facebook, you want to do that on a separate device. And probably you may have gone there once and got kicked out of StreamYard when you try to do that on the same device.
Let's just note that it's just not millennials who use technology, because Representative Baumbach is walking us through this process. So thank you.
Well, I have to say my first career was computers, but literally it began with punched cards. So, yes, I've got a technology background, but it's been a while. Okay, Eric, we're going to go on the assumption, and regardless, you'll be able to post even the tape, the recording of it at the end.
Yeah.
So we have some. I threw some questions together. I'd like each of you, and we're going to just go on the order that I see you. So I've got Larry and Rae and Madinah and Eric. If you can provide an elevator speech, no more than 3 sentences of why you're a legislator, what your priorities are. Larry?
First of all, Paul, I want to thank you for this warm invite. It is a pleasure for all of us to be here, join with you to reach out to the residents of Delaware and beyond. We want to thank everyone who joined us on Facebook Live. For me, the reason why I became a legislator was because it's who I am. Being of service has inspired me for years, and I really wanted to give back to a community that has given so much to me. Whether it's through legislation, whether it's through service, I want to be the voice of the voiceless. I want to be the defender of the historically disregarded. I'm here for everyone. I'm State Representative Larry Lambert, House District 7. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Larry. Rae, you are up.
That's a hard one to follow after. Why am I a legislator? I ran for office because I had concerns as a mother, and even more was concerned as an educator. I have policy background. I understand policy. I'm former legislative aide working for the House Democratic Caucus. And when we see policy into practice, it's a little different than what I know that why we decided to run that legislation. So why I ran it is because for both my experience being in the classroom, being a mother, being a public service, because I've been advocating since I was 15 years old for communities, it was just time for me to step up and serve.
That's great, Rae.
So thank you, and shout out to everyone watching. Thank you for joining us.
Great. Representative Madinah.
Thanks for having us. And a fun fact for everybody who's watching, one of my introductions really to state government was with Representative Baumbach. So my first position working for the State House as a legislative fellow, I was staffing one of the committees that you were chairing. And so I got to see a great legislator as my intro. And as far as why I decided to run, I really ran because I was frustrated, kind of like what Representative Moore said, with different issues that I was seeing in the community. And having worked in the legislature, I knew that we could do better. And so instead of complaining and just, commenting on Facebook, I decided I would get into it and try to actually make some positive changes. So here we are.
Thank you. Eric, you're up.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Perfectly.
Terrific. So first of all, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us, and thank you to Representative Baumbach for hosting this, and my other newbie legislators for joining me. I am the 27th District Representative in the Newark-Bear-Glasgow area, and in terms of why I ran for office, I've been very active in my community since I was 13. I like to joke that I was one of those kids who drove my parents crazy. They were always driving me to some activity, and that continued into my adulthood with lots of volunteer and leadership roles with nonprofits and community organizations. And then about 5 years ago, I got very active in local and state politics. And the more I learned, the more I felt like there needed to be serious change and big change to the Delaware way. And so I ran for office, and now here I am, and I'm very happy to be here.
That's great. Larry, what's one thing from your background that you feel is really important to your service as a legislator?
For me, one of the things that I think is very important to my background is my years as a teacher. For 8 years, I was the director of arts programming for the Boys and Girls Clubs of Delaware, at our local Claymont Club, and at the Browns Boys and Girls Club in the city. And for me, it was the best job in the world. And being able to engage our youth and nurture them and guide them before they got caught up in the criminal justice system, domestic violence, addiction, despair, being able to engage them at that young age, it showed my leadership style of being proactive. Like Frederick Douglass said, it's easier to raise a child than it is to fix a broken man. So for me, my legislative style is the same. And I just think that it's very much influenced me. It influences how I lead. And I'm looking forward to just being of service to our great community.
Thank you. Rae, what's one thing from your background that's really important for your service as a legislator?
So it's similar to Larry, to Representative Lambert. So in 2018, I helped run a attorney general campaign where we focused on juvenile justice. It was at that point that I realized how important having someone, whether it be a teacher or a mentor in a child's life, to help them turn their life around or to stop them in their tracks before they, head down a long path for redemption. So with that, after the campaign ended, I ended up being an educator. And out of all the jobs that I've held, being an educator has been the most rewarding. And it's like you go in, you're thinking you're ready to teach these kids, but these kids are teaching you. I've learned so much about myself being in the classroom. We're able to give and to share with one another, develop just in such a beautiful way. Now, education definitely has its challenges in the classroom, but at the end of the day, I'm just so happy that I got a chance to be in front of a group of children that are brilliant and that needed some life poured into them. And I was able to be that for them and continue to be that as well. So being an educator is definitely a lifeline for me during this journey.
Thank you. So Madinah, what is one thing important from your past that you bring to your work now as a legislator?
Well, I kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier in what inspired me to get involved. But working in the legislature and actually seeing the policy making process for myself, I think is a big part of it. And coming from a diverse background, I'm one of 6 girls and grew up in a working class family. But I was homeschooled for a couple years. I went to private school with Muslim students in the area, went to a charter school, I went to a public school. And so I was able to see a lot of diversity in ethnicity, diversity in economic background. And as I saw those different environments, I was able to kind of get a better sense of the world we live in and the state we have. And then working in the halls of power, being able to see, oh, this is how we change some of the problems that I'm seeing. And inequities and disparities in our education system, in the criminal justice system. So I think one of the things that a lot of us bring to the table, which is really exciting and valuable, is our diverse backgrounds. All of us come from different backgrounds, and we bring a unique perspective to the legislature, which is huge.
Thank you. Eric, what's one important thing from your past that you bring to your work as a legislator?
This is a tough. You need to take this on the road, Paul. You're good at this. One thing I would touch on is just who I am and how I grew up. And I grew up downstate in a tiny little town called Bridgeville. We only had 60 people in my graduating class. And I grew up very lower middle class. And I remember going to the grocery store with my mother every week and her having a calculator, and her budget was $60. And I'm not kidding. If she went 1 penny over, something went back. Money was not a struggle for us, but money was not, just free flowing. And, my parents both worked, my father worked as basically a laborer and in agriculture, and my mother worked as a registrations clerk for 31 years at a hospital. I was the first person in my family to attend college, and with my mother, I know that there were things that I think she could have accomplished and would have liked to accomplish, but she had roadblocks in her way, including frankly, sexism in some instances. So, but I say all this to say that I felt like I have this opportunity. And now that I have been so supported by my family and friends over the years and so fortunate, and I can take care of myself and all of that, I'll never forget that, former candidate for federal office, Carrie Evelyn Harris. She said to me, she said, it's incumbent upon those of us with the opportunity and the means to help others who don't have the time or the means to help themselves to do so. And I think, that's all of that is a big part of why I ran for office.
Thanks, Eric. So Larry, what's one memorable, I think all of us have this, what's maybe the most memorable experience you had on the campaign trail?
I've had numerous memorable moments. I just want to give a shout out to all of the wonderful, amazing members of my campaign, the donors, the supporters. It was an amazing ride, one of the best moments of my life. One moment that really stood out for me, I've always been an advocate for our brothers and sisters with disabilities. And one moment that really stood out for me was I had a 16-year-old volunteer on my campaign that was born deaf. And one of the doors that she knocked on in the Claymont area, she knocked on the door of a 90-year-old that was deaf herself. Mm-hmm. And when she started to speak to her and explain to her my campaign platform, the woman signed to her that she was deaf. And the volunteer for my team, they had a signed conversation about my campaign, and the woman said she would vote for me and put a sign in her yard. And for me, it's just the nexus of my love and support for the young people, my love and support for our brothers and sisters with disabilities. And that's one of the favorite moments of my campaign. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. Ray, don't you hate following Larry sometimes? It can be
I was gonna ask him, can we switch?
I was gonna say, look, I'm 2 after Larry, and I still don't know what I'm saying to all of that.
Right.
It's a great story. Wow.
One of my memorable, I have many of them, but for the sake of this conversation, and as we talk about why we're here, I actually was phone banking one evening, and I actually talked to a lady who were having unemployment issues. And, we ran campaigns during unprecedented times, and everyone was facing some type of issue. And I remember the first time I come in contact with somebody who I actually could help. It's like you hear a lot of things on the campaign trail, and you're like, well, I can't really do anything about that. But now I actually had the opportunity to say, oh, I know who I can connect you with. I can have somebody make sure they call you, and I could call you back. It was so she was able to get her unemployment resolved. I also had one that absentee ballots, because absentee ballots were sent out twice here in Middletown. Then for the general, it wasn't sent out at all. So we had to work very quickly and rapidly to make sure that everyone had an opportunity to vote.
Thanks, Ray. Okay, Madinah, you've had a little bit of time.
See,
what's your experience on the campaign trail?
I'm a good listener. So I was trying to think of my story, but I was genuinely listening to you two. I should have a good answer for this by now, but I mean, the experience of running a campaign in itself is really memorable. And, like Ray mentioned earlier, it's an experience that helps you learn about yourself and learn about your community. And so before I won, I was like, I'm glad I did this. This was a good decision. One of the memories that comes to mind was on election day, this woman who came up to me, and we were wearing masks at this point, right? And she was like, I voted for you. I made my husband vote for you. And I told him, if you don't vote for her, I'm voting for Trump. And I was like, oh my God, what a threat. And like, it's really humbling, I think, just the experience overall, having people vote for you because they believe that you can make a difference. It's incredibly humbling. It's an honor. And having people just like remember that I talked to them and they're like excited about it, and no one's ever talked to them about politics before or listened to them and how important it is to them. It's really meaningful. And, it's exciting that we have the ability now to do something. Now that we got in office, we can actually make some of those things happen. So that's my answer.
So Eric, what's your most memorable experience on the campaign trail?
And I'll say first, I've got to follow everybody. So I think I've got it toughest here.
I think you may have to, I don't know, right after Larry's bad, but being the fourth is also very challenging.
And I have so many memories, and snippets and snapshots, and they come back to me. And for anybody out there thinking of running for office, they're not all good. I have some memories where I'm like, oh, you knock some doors, but the vast majority of them are good. One that always sticks out for me, and I'm going to try not to get emotional because I can never talk about this without getting emotional. My right-hand man, G, and shout out to him if he's on the call or not, knocked on a door one day, and the lady invited us in. We were in there for probably about an hour and 20 minutes. And it was an older Black lady who was dying of cancer. And she had no hair on her head. And the first thing that struck me was how at peace she was with the fact that she didn't have much more time. There was no more treatment to be done, no more anything, and she wanted to go on her own terms. And that was the first thing, just for her to be so open and so calm and peaceful about that. But the second thing was, she was talking to us about how very active she was in the civil rights movement of the 60s. She talked about marching next to Martin Luther King Jr. She talked about marching next to these just giants. And she was so inspirational. And then she lit into us because she said, what is it with young people today? She said, and not you. And I'm thinking, I'm glad you consider me young. But she said, where has that fire gone? She said, I remember the fire. I remember the passion. I remember people getting out in the streets and people being attacked by dogs and knocked down by police batons and fire hoses. Where is that fire today? She said, why are so many young people so complacent, and people in general? She said, and even if it's because you're so frustrated and you feel like you can't make a difference, she said, I will not be around much longer. She said, you make me a promise today that one of the main things that you will do once you're in office, she said, because I know you're going to win. She said, you keep people involved and you never lose that fire. And I will never forget that. And by the end of it, we were all crying and giving each other hugs.
Yeah. Thanks, Eric. Delaware's kind of unique where you win on Tuesday night and you're on duty at 8 a.m. on Wednesday morning.
So true.
So between the day after the election and when you were sworn in January, what's the most memorable experience you had, Larry?
There were so many memorable moments, and one of them that stood out with me, and this theme keeps coming up, the young people. The young people are everything. They're our future. And when we pass legislation, it's important to me to stay engaged with young people because they're going to inherit this world.
Yes.
And one of the moments that I have, every other Friday, I work with the community, and we do a large food distribution where we give out between 30 to 40,000 pounds of food. So at one of our food distributions, a young man in the community, a 14-year-old named Emmett, he and his mom reached out to me and he asked, how can he help? How can he be of support? And I met with him and he put together a fundraiser where he raised $200 from selling furniture around the house, from selling things, odds and ends. And he presented it to the food distribution. And everybody celebrated him. We celebrated him on Facebook. And for me, just seeing another young person giving back to the community, stepping up, helping out his fellow neighbor, it was just so beautiful and warm for me. And that moment definitely stood out. And again, I just want to give a shout out to all of the wonderful people in my 7th district and across Delaware that when these challenging times came, they really stood up. And they really helped out their fellow neighbors. And that's that solidarity, that love that Delaware is known for. And we look forward to bringing that spirit of service to you as our freshman legislators at the House level.
Thanks, Larry. Rae, what's the most memorable experience during that time between early November and early January?
So as you stated, you really are on the clock at 8 a.m. the next day. I've been working since the day after the election. And I say I was officially sworn in because I definitely hit the ground running, and I have not looked back. I have not regretted any aspect of the journey at all. I think for me, it's like, I had experience working for the legislator. Working for the legislature. Now working with the legislature and being in the legislature is really different. It's like I thought I knew how things shake and move, but I call it when being on the other side of the door. It's a whole new experience, and I'm really embracing it. I had to take a step back so I could really fully immerse myself. I'm a researcher by nature, so I become very inquisitive when I hear a process or I have to do a deep dive. If I hear something that piques my interest, and I've been down a lot of rabbit holes lately, but our state is, as you said, is very unique and it's complex, and it takes sometimes taking a step back and asking the right questions and having the right and an impactful conversations to get a gist of where we are and where we need to go.
Thanks, Rae. Madinah, what's your most memorable experience in those first 2 months?
Well, real quick, before I forget, I just wanted to say I love that about you, Rae, that you go digging, and every once in a while it's like a text message from Rae, and she's like, so I was digging and this is what I found. And I'm like, I love that. Thank you. So don't change that. And we have this weird system, right, where we're automatically in once the election happens. But in some districts where it's overwhelming Democrat to Republican, people were calling me even before the general, and they're like, all right, we need you at this meeting. And I'm like, I didn't even officially win yet. But it's been, I think, really memorable coming into office during a pandemic, which not at least I'll talk for myself. I didn't anticipate coming into office during a global pandemic. And so the types of issues and problems that I expected to be helping people with are a lot different. A lot of the issues people are reaching out to us about is like unemployment assistance, food, housing, like, really important parts of life. But besides that, I guess one of the more memorable experiences was the Friday after the election. I prayed Friday prayer, and I'm the first practicing Muslim to be elected to the General Assembly in Delaware, which is an immense honor. And it's COVID times. Thank you. It's COVID times. We're praying inside, and we're spread out. And normally in our prayers, we're like standing shoulder to shoulder, close to each other. So it's really weird. And I was sitting outside with my mat for myself, spaced from other people, and listening to the sermon. And after the sermon and the prayer, there was an announcement. Oh, Sister Madinah is our state rep for this area, and she's here. And it's so important that she came here for the first Jummah prayer after she got elected. And I was like, I didn't dress for everyone to like recognize me. Like I was just like, I just looked up, And I was like, oh, I guess I should plan like better in the future. But it was such a really, warming feeling. And afterwards, everybody came over and I had my brochures and they're like asking me questions, and just the feeling that I'm able to give my community access to the halls of power in a way that they weren't ever able to access before. It's really hard to even fathom. It's a really great feeling.
It's wonderful. Eric, clean up.
Yeah. Well, I'll say we were talking about, hitting the ground running and how some of us, we hit the ground running while we were campaigning. I declared my candidacy on May 1st of 2019. And I remember Newcastle County Executive Matt Meyer joking with me. He said, Eric, you are the earliest person to declare in this entire country, except for the Democrats for president. We started knocking doors July 4th weekend of 2019. And right away, I had my spreadsheet going and we were doing constituent services, and right off the bat. And a funny thing, I didn't realize until I was out at the polls on general election day that, by the way, if you win, you take over at midnight. I had no idea. And I was like, oh, good to know. Thanks. Okay. In terms of the most memorable moment between November and January. So and I think my colleagues here can relate to this. You are in such a whirlwind for so many months, and especially getting up to the primary, then the general. And it's so intense, especially I think we are all working and running our campaigns at the same time, just like we're all working and being state reps now. And then the night that we had people over and I won, and we won, and it was wonderful. But I guess I'm the kind of person, like I live in my head a lot. And so I've always been the kind of person to process it in my head, but not process it emotionally, and put that off and say, I'll do that later. So it was probably, I had never felt this real sense of we won, and it was very odd. Then one night I was in my kitchen and I was thinking about it, and it just came over me and it hit me. We won. And it was like I realized it for the first time. And I thought about how hard so many people had worked and how hard I had worked. And it hit me. And I sound foolish. Thank God this isn't on videotape. I was dancing around my kitchen.
Eric, it is.
Yes. I turned on music. I'm dancing around the kitchen. I grabbed my cat and I'm like, got her paws going. And I'm, and then I started crying. And then I started thinking about my mother, because she saw me start my campaign, but she passed away before the campaign ended. But it hit me and it felt so good. And then I was like, we did it, and now let's go to work.
Can I tap on that real quick? Eric, we're here because it wasn't until I saw our Madam Vice President get sworn in that it hit me that I was on the ballot with her. And I was like, oh my God, wait, I won. And it's like, you've been working, and I hadn't processed it. Sentiments. That's what I say, sentiments. I cried too. I cried in Inauguration Day for our Joe, our President Biden, and him being here for our home state. He put Delaware on the map again, I think it was really emotionally overwhelming, and I finally connected with that.
Well, I'm going to start with you, because I think you're starting on the answer to the next question, which is, we had a 3-week session to begin the 2-year session here in January. Well, there in January. What's the most the experience that you're most proud of or were excited about during the first 3 weeks of session this year? We're going to close with you, Larry. You're going to be fourth this time, okay?
Wait, where am I now?
You're after Rae.
Okay, all right. I'm listening with this year. I'm thinking with this.
The most thing that I won't say surprised. I think I just been taking it all in and really observing how we operate, what the needs are. I've been having very meaningful conversations. And I think it also during this time, especially as freshmen, we have to figure out how effective we are going to be, what type of legislator we want to be. There's all different types of type of legislators you could be. But exactly what do I want my legacy to be? And as I'm keeping that in the forefront of my mind, I'm just making sure that how right now I could be impactful, because as everyone knows, the bills are coming through, and they're coming through very quickly. And to really stay on top of everything, you got to make sure you stay organized. And so for me right now is honestly, I'm taking everything and I'm just absorbing all the knowledge and all the conversations that I'm having, especially surrounding education, talking with fellow educators across the state. I'm connecting with teachers in Sussex County and hearing how similar but different their experiences are teaching there, and until you don't know until you have those conversations and gain a new perspective. So I'm just really taking away about the experience and just absorbing all that there is to know on this side.
Thanks, Rae. So Madinah, the first 3-week session, what are you most excited or proud of? What's the most notable experience you've had during this session?
I was like, wait, I was thinking about the wrong question.
Give us a random answer to any question. We'll go with it.
I mean, I would kind of reiterate a lot of what Rae said, and we have a similar experience. We both worked in the House before becoming House members. I was a little surprised at just how many people got my phone number so quickly. People who I never gave my number to. I was open. I gave my number with a lot of people in the community because I was like, I want you to be able to reach me when you have an issue. But like the day after the election, I had just put my phone away for a moment, and like my voicemail box filled up, and it's kind of like overwhelming understanding just how many lobbyists and special interest groups there are. So that's been a little overwhelming, I would say, but enlightening, and I've learned a lot for sure. As far as like what I'm most excited about, I mean, we didn't do that much crazy stuff in the first 3 weeks, but one of the pieces of legislation that we all voted for helped make sure that people that got unemployment this past year aren't getting slammed with taxes. And it's stuff like that that's not necessarily like super, it's not front page type news, but it's really impactful on people's lives. And that's the kind of legislation that I'm kind of passionate about is, making sure that we're making people's lives as easy as we can, especially in a time like this. So I'm excited about some stuff that I'm working on and researching. I don't want to say too much yet, but something's coming, and I think we can all say that. And I'm excited to be able to introduce the legislation that we're working on and hear what people think about it.
That's great. And by the way, Madinah, you're going to lead answering the next round of questions. So I'm going to
Oh,
let you know
Lord.
that ahead of time. Okay, we're going to keep rotating through. Eric, so the first 3 weeks of session, what stood out? What's the most exciting or proud experience you had?
Well, one thing that stood out is how much I had to learn, and which in the back of your head coming in as a new legislator, but it's that old saying, you don't know there till you go there. So I spent a lot of time during, our session just trying to absorb things in terms of how processes work. Even something as simple as who gets to speak and when. There are so many things that people don't think about. I actually had a call yesterday with a couple of wonderful policy people in Dover because I said, I'm a very linear thinker. I need bullet points. I need you to explain to me A to Z how I introduce legislation and get it through. And I took my notes, and man, but one thing that's very memorable to me is during a couple of the committee meetings and during a couple of the House caucuses, there have been times where I've wanted to say things and I knew that some people would not like them or not appreciate them, or I wondered, how will this be taken? And there was that part of me that was going, just don't say it, just don't say it. And then I would think, don't take the easy way out. I made a promise to myself that if I got into office, that I would be true to myself, I would be true to my constituents, but that I would be a voice for people who believed in me and believe in what I campaigned on. And that, let me tell you, when you're sitting in front of 41 people, especially when you're a brand new legislator and some of them have been in there for decades or a long time, and that some of them are going to take great umbrage at what you say, it is not an easy thing to speak up sometimes. But I'm proud that I did that every time I felt like I needed to, and I don't regret any of it. And the great thing is, a lot of people, even texting me right away, would say thank you for saying that. So it's given me a good confidence boost.
Thanks, Eric. Larry, now your cleanup. So first 3 weeks of session, what really stood out for you? What was most exciting or memorable for you?
Thanks, Paul. And you all are a hard act to follow. It's hard following you guys up, these wonderful answers. For me, the most enjoyable part of my first 3 weeks in session, as much as I learned, as fast as the pace was, trying to keep up and just absorb everything, the most enjoyable part for me was when I was added as a co-prime on the minimum wage bill. My first foray into advocating was when I was co-chair of Delaware's Livable Wage Coalition. And back then we advocated, we fought for a livable wage. And what we noticed was that politicians would raise the minimum wage by 50 cents and pat themselves on the back for the next 2 years, all the way into re-election. And now we're in a space where we have a sub-minimum wage of $8.75. Meanwhile, our neighboring states of New Jersey and Maryland have a minimum wage of $12. So for me, when we look at the social determinants of health, I see intergenerational poverty as one of the main things that leads to our ills, whether it's crime, whether it's poverty, whether it's addiction, despair. A lot of these things are tied to intergenerational poverty. And for me, my leadership style is to address root cause issues. And if we address things such as the minimum wage, I think that makes a big difference for all of us. And when I was added to that bill as a co-prime, it was just seeing everything come full circle from when I was an advocate 8-9 years ago to where I'm now listed as a co-prime on the bill. It was just an honor. And I look forward to, working hard, continuing to build relationships with my counterparts in Dover to get that legislation passed as soon as possible.
Thanks, Larry. So Madinah, you actually sort of teed up the next question, which is, what one bill from you, either filed or to be filed, are you most excited about that you're willing to share tonight?
Oh, okay. Dang. What's another one that I could talk about?
I want to hear the big one. Come on, Madinah. Come on. Give it up.
No, I'll talk. So one of the things that was really important to our campaign was the environment and environmental justice, and it's important to, I would say, all of us newbies. And so part of our campaign's platform was a Green New Deal for Delaware, and we drew inspiration from the federal Green New Deal. And part of it's a pretty long document. You can check it out on Medium. But part of it is a Green Amendment, which would be a constitutional amendment to ensure all Delawareans have a right to clean air, clean water, and a clean environment. And it's in the pretty early stages, but other states have this legislation already. And it's pretty much every other day in the newspaper, you can see an example of environmental injustice happening in our state. People's water being polluted, whether it's up here in Newcastle County or in Sussex County, even in Kent County. And so I think it's really past time. And I'm excited about that. And just being in some meetings this week with advocates, they're touching on all those issues. And there's I think, appetite for it. So that's something that I'm excited about. But it's going to be kind of a heavy lift because constitutional amendments are 2 sessions in a row. So that'll be a little bit of a marathon.
So I'm going to interject that Carl actually posted the Medium web link for where you can find it. Thank you, Carl. And also,
shout out to Carl.
If I remember correctly, the Green Amendment is part of Pennsylvania's Constitution. So this isn't just the California and Massachusetts or something. This is very mainstream. So thank you, Eric. What of your legislation, either filed already or to be filed, are you most excited about that you can share tonight?
And I haven't filed any yet, and because January was a whirlwind to say the least, and you're just learning. Now that we're in break, that's going to be a big part of my focus, is getting some legislation filed. And I've mentioned this a couple of times, but to put it out there, something I'm excited to be working on is getting paid sick time for all Delaware workers. I think especially during COVID, we have seen how important this is. I know people who have gone to work when they thought they had COVID or when they were waiting for test results. And it's easy to point a finger at them and say that's awful. But when you're talking about living in a nation where over half of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, if you're asking somebody to miss work for 1, 2, 3 days a week, you're not just asking them to miss work. You're asking them to miss their car payment. You're asking them to miss their mortgage payment. You're asking them not to eat for a while. You're asking them not to give their children the things they need. So you can't point a finger at them. And they shouldn't be placed by our system in that position. So it is about fairness, first of all, because I think everybody should have sick time. I mean, if you're sick, you're sick. And just at a human level, you deserve to be able to stay home and be paid for that and not be punished for it. But at a public health level, it's very important, especially frontline people. Do you want your, waiter sick? Do you want the person handling your produce sick? Whether it's COVID or the flu or whatever it is. I have a family member who works downstate, manages a retail store, and general manager of the entire store. She gets 1 week paid vacation a year and nothing else. Nothing. No sick time, no anything. So I think it's long overdue that we join some other states and mandate this.
Thanks, Eric. So Larry, what legislation that either you've already filed or you will be filing can you share with us tonight that you're most excited about?
So in regards to legislation that I filed, similar to my counterparts, what I'm working on, I can't reveal yet. I wish I could, but I've been having weekly meetings about it. There's a lot of wonderful things going on behind the scenes. One of the bills, another bill I was added as a prime on is House Bill 100 for elementary school mental health services. I really love that bill so much. It's something that I'm super proud of. So as a teacher, I always incorporated local mental health services such as Tomorrow's Change, located at our Claymont Community Center, such as the Aquila Drug Treatment Center for Teens, where I also volunteered at. We did a program at our Claymont Boys and Girls Club called Breaking the Silence, where I worked with the teen coordinator, Caitlin, and we brought in a whole panel of different mental health services, and we had opportunities for the kids to open up and talk. And it led into us having what they called healing circles with the kids that were age appropriate. And we've had mental health services for the kids through my community advocacy for years. And now it's just such an honor. It's so humbling that now I'm added as a co-prime to a bill that will ensure that kids will have access to those free mental health services K through 5. So there's more to come, and that's just one of the many bills that I'm honored and proud to be a part of.
Thanks, Larry. Rae, clean up here. So what bill are you on or planning that we'll see soon that you're excited about?
I would say one of the current bills that I'm proud to be a co-prime on is with our majority leader, Representative Longhurst, is the feminine hygiene for middle schoolers. A lot of us as educators, our classroom is our second home, and actually is really a second home, as in it's built. So I know that in my first year of teaching, me and my teammate, we actually packed feminine hygiene bags for our middle school girls, because you'll be surprised of the amount of girls who do not have access to feminine products. And it's not on them. So we took that on, we absorbed that, and I'm just happy to hear that now every middle school and I believe high school will be required to have those items for girls. And that's huge. Just like everyone else, I am working on something that I would like to see, that I've been having a little more conversations on, is really trying to address homelessness in the state. I would love to see a tiny homes project funded and become development plans get underway. I know that Newcastle County just opened up the Hope Center here in northern Newcastle County, but we still have Kent and Sussex to think about. And their homeless population is steadily increasing. And with COVID-19 and all that it has bring, we're seeing a little more increase. So just know that I am having conversations to see exactly what we could do about that. And I'm hoping to see that some legislation comes out of those conversations. Thanks,
Rae. So I think this is the last round of prepared questions. Eric, we're going to start with you. Of legislation that colleagues have introduced, what are you most excited about? Or ones that will be shortly released?
Right. Well, a couple of them. One of them would be the minimum wage bill. And but I've been very candid. I think we can do a lot better than the current minimum wage bill, and I did a lot of research on that, and I've put together some slides, and I'm hoping to get an audience with the sponsors of the bill, because I think that there are things that we can do that will be even better for Delawareans for that bill. The cannabis legalization bill, I'm very excited about. I'm excited about some of the things that, you know, I had a call with the sponsor and some other folks one night, and some of the things that are getting added to it are very exciting as well, in terms of, I don't want to go into a lot, but making things more equitable in terms of racial and social justice and such. So, you know, I'm really excited about the cannabis legalization bill too, just because, you know, cannabis legalization or cannabis having it illegal has its roots in racism. That's where it all comes from when you go back and do the history, and it has disproportionately affected people of color and poor people as well in such horrible ways that it is long overdue that we get this done, and I think it is finally going to happen this year.
Thank you. Larry, what legislation that others have already filed or are expected to file are you most excited about this session?
There's a number of bills that I'm super proud to support, and one of the bills that comes to mind is the community solar bill that I've been working on for a little while, since last year when I was advocating for it, when Senator McDowell was working on it. So for me, environmental justice is something that we're all passionate about. And I've been working in that space for years, advocating for some of our vulnerable communities here in Claymont, in the Route 9 corridor, in Wilmington, where my family lives. And when it comes to community solar, I think that that's a very important bill, because some of our more dense communities, particularly low-income communities and communities of color, sometimes they don't have the space to put up solar panels. Sometimes they don't have the funds to purchase solar panels. But if we can have solar farms similar to the one in the Southbridge area, then we can provide solar energy to whole communities. And that's what community solar really means. It's like a solar farm. It's community solar, literally. So that's something that I've been actively working on up here in the Claymont area too, working with my friend, Dr. Jeff Richardson with the University of Delaware. So we've been in communication with our local Claymont Community Center. For me, being a legislator isn't about what you plan to do, what you want to do. It's about what you have done. And for me, I've been working on this, and I stand with legislators that have been doing the work. So community solar is a bill that's long overdue. I'm looking forward to working with legislators, building relationships to pass it as soon as possible. So that's just one of the many bills that I'm super proud to be a part of.
Thanks, Larry. Rae, what legislation is either out there or about to be out there that you're most excited about this year? Oh, you're muted, Rae.
This happens about 5 times a day, especially with virtual school. Where
Okay.
I could be going and I'm on mute, and they be like, "Miss Moore, click the button." I'm super excited, especially as an educator, about the K-3 special education funding bill. As we all know, I've been saying this since being in the classroom, especially seeing it unfold of how essential it is to catch students in the beginning. It is easier. We can give them so much more academic support by catching them in the front of the system, instead of, finding out in high school that they needed intervention services a long time ago. It definitely will help strengthen our pipeline of students coming out. We will have more successful students with this. So I'm really excited about, and I'm equally excited about, is Senator Pinckney's resolution that's calling gun violence as a public health crisis. I was a gun sense candidate. And I stand with Moms Demand Action and the efforts that they are making strides on. And I keep saying this. There were students that I've had and connected with that actually were victims of gun violence over the summer. And reading those stories is heart-wrenching. And we need, as a state, we need to do something. So I am excited to be a co-prime on that resolution and can't wait to vote on that either as well.
Thanks, Rae. Madinah, what are you excited about legislation that's either out there or is expected to be out there this year?
So I cheated a little bit. I went and looked at all the bills that I decided to be a co-sponsor of just now. And one of the things that I saw has to do with something that's really important to me, and that's economic justice. And I think economic justice is really the root of all the issues we see in our society. A lot of the issues of like racial disparities stem from that. And so I'll plug one of your bills that you've been working on for a really long time to make the EITC, the Earned Income Tax Credit, refundable or partially refundable. Any bill that puts money in the hands of people that don't have enough is important. And I'm proud to be a co-sponsor of legislation like that. So your bill, Representative Kowalko's bill to add higher income tax brackets for the top earners in our state. There's another, the one I mentioned earlier, Representative Osinski's bill to help keep people from getting slammed come tax season for getting unemployment. It just makes sense. So I'm excited about that, and I'm hoping that we'll continue that theme as we go through session. Another bill that I'm excited about, although it doesn't 100% affect me, is the Crown Act, which is basically making sure that people of color are not penalized for how our hair grows out of our head. And people don't see my hair, but it's still important to me. And, you know, there's so many stereotypes that our society has around hair. And every time I read a story about a child who cut their hair to be in a wrestling match or to get a job I just saw an article not that long ago about a girl who had to take her bonnet off in gym, in like a rehearsal for cheerleading. And it's just, there's so much insensitivity and misunderstanding around Black culture. And so it's really important for us to just protect our rights and keep those conversations going. So I'm excited to be co-sponsor of that. And I just love the title of it, the Crown Act. I mean, our hair is a crown and it's a blessing. So I'm excited about that.
Thanks, Madinah. So we've got about 5 minutes left. So it's going to be a little free form. We're going to start with Larry again. So for the last question, I don't have anything formal, but what would you like to leave the viewers with what are your thoughts? We've got 5 months more of the legislative session. What do you see ahead, or what do you want to leave with the viewers? Larry? Oh, Larry, we're not hearing you well yet.
I think your internet.
Larry, we're gonna start with Rae, and go ahead. Go ahead. We just heard something.
Paul, for me, we're on this call.
Larry, we're going to start with Rae and come back to you, okay? Okay. Go, Rae.
I guess one takeaway I would like everybody to know is that we all come from different walks of life, and it's actually humanistic. We're real live, like we have real life experiences that has happened to us that has prompted us to step up and operate in these spaces. And we keep those issues and those experiences at the forefront of our minds as we maneuvering in this space. I keep my students near and dear to my heart. I keep the educators near and dear to my heart in the forefront of my mind when I'm dealing with education. Certain experiences and walking in life that I've had personally. I've been the state employee who was on the cusp, who couldn't qualify for state assistance, but also couldn't afford to send my son to preschool. I've been in those shoes. and still is able to still take a stand and succeed and bring those people with me. I understand that at the end of the day, everybody wants to live a safe life and thrive, and it's okay. We can continue those narratives and still protect not just basic quality of life as we go forward.
Thanks, Rae. Madinah?
I guess what I'd leave people with is, one of the things that set our campaign apart, I think, and that was really important to us, was making sure that we're doing kind of what Eric had mentioned, just bringing more people into the process and making the political process accessible to the community. And so what I want people to know, if you're tuning in and you're catching this part of our live, that we are all here to listen to you, to hear what issues you're dealing with, to listen to solutions that you have for those problems, and to offer ideas as well, and to really fight for our communities. And so what I've been trying to do over the past month and a half, 2 months, is to get that message out there, because so many people in the community don't know what a state rep is or what a state rep can do to make your life better. And so trying to give people ideas about things that we can help with, and learn new things, learn new problems that maybe I've never experienced, to try to help out with. So just know that we're accessible. You can send me at least a message on my Facebook. You can email, call. Hopefully pretty soon we can meet in person and talk about these issues. But I just want people to know that we're here for you. And, a lot of us are dealing with really difficult situations, but we're going to get through it together.
Thanks, Madinah. Eric, closing thoughts?
Yeah, and thank you, Madinah. That was a perfect lead into what I was going to say. One of the things that I campaigned on and talked about a lot during my campaign is that I want to keep people involved. We had so many people involved in our campaign, and they were all just such blessings. But I'm a numbers guy. I was just doing some math. We have 62 legislators in Dover. That is 0.000659% of Delaware's population. So I can assure you that the 62 of us alone cannot solve all of Delaware's problems. It's impossible. So please get out there, get involved in any way you can. Join your Democratic RD committee meetings. Volunteer for candidates. Work on issue campaigns. That's so important. Call us. Tell us the legislation you want introduced. There are lots of wonderful groups here in Delaware. Some of them are issue-based, meaning maybe they're about the environment. Maybe they're about economic justice. Maybe they're about transparency in government. There's a ton of them. There's something to get involved in. So if you ever wonder, where do I start? Please reach out to me or reach out to any of us. We'll be happy to steer you in the right direction. But please, please don't sit on the sidelines. Get involved in any way you can and try to make a difference. We all have to do this together.
Thanks, Eric. And Larry, are you in for the close, what is it? Cleanup of the session here? Closing comments. Okay, I was thinking for the four of us, let's all mute our microphones and see if that helps Larry have more bandwidth, okay?
So this is a problem that I think all of us are passionate about fixing, which is broadband in Delaware and access to high-speed internet.
Yeah.
And it's been a problem for a lot of people in all of our districts, especially with COVID and everything going virtual.
Yeah.
Especially with virtual school.
Yeah.
Larry, I'm very sorry that your final comment isn't working. If we can each put our email address in a Facebook feed, I'll put all five in mine. If you try to do the same, I think some people were saying, how do I reach out to each of you? So I think that's a good way to end. We are at 8:02 and our plan was to stop at 8 o'clock. I want to thank each of you for running, for winning, for serving, and for joining us tonight and helping people learn about you and learn what you're excited about. And I think many of them are excited for you now. So thank you all. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you,
for
Paul.
having us.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Stay safe.
Be warm.